Before we get into actually practicing the piece, I'd like to talk about a few of the musical notation symbols that you're going to encounter in your sheet music. The first thing that we're going to identify is the clef. The clef is important because it tells us what letter names are given to the lines of each staff, lines and spaces of each staff. In this case, you'll see that we're in treble clef, or also referred to as G clef. It's on the left-hand side of each system all the way throughout the piece, so we're always reading in treble clef for this piece. The next set of symbols that we're looking at are known as a key signature. A key signature is really important because it lets the melodies know what notes they're playing, but it also tells the armonías what chords are playing. So it's really important for the left hand. The key signature and the left hand are inextricably tied. A key signature can have either sharps or flats or natural symbols. In this case, you'll see two sharps, F sharp and C sharp. That means we're playing in D major or Re mayor. The next set of symbols are immediately right of the key signature. They're known as the time signature. A time signature has two numbers, a top number and a bottom number. The top number tells us how many beats are found in each measure that we'll be continually counting in cycles throughout the entirety of the music. The bottom number tells us what note receives the full value of those three. In this case, 4 means a quarter note, which is a black note head with a stem and no flag. The 4 chords needed to play this arrangement of Mi Ranchito are D major, Re mayor, G major, Sol mayor, A7, La séptima, and D7, Re séptima. All right, let's take some time to go over these chords one by one, step by step. So the first chord that we encounter in this piece is an A7, La séptima. The way we'll play A7 is by using our third finger, second string, second fret. Then we'll take our second finger and place that on the second fret of the fourth string. It should sound something like this. Excellent. The next chord we encounter is D major, Re mayor, which is the tonic for this key. We'll start with our third finger and place it this time on the first string, second fret. Then next is our pinky on the second string, third fret. We'll place then our second finger on the second fret of the third string. And finally, we'll wrap around our thumb around the neck and get it to either mute lightly or to go ahead and press down on the sixth string, second fret. Should sound something like this. The next chord we encounter in the piece is D7. Now, we're already in a D position, so we'll go ahead and just modify that to a D7, from D major to D7, by lifting up our pinky, then using our first finger on the first fret of the second string. Should sound something like this. And immediately after we play D7 for only one measure, we encounter G major. Now, since we are going to use our pinky, and that's a free finger here, we'll go ahead and place that one first. On the first string, third fret, we'll take our third finger on the third fret of the sixth string, and then we'll take our middle or second finger on the second fret of the fifth string, and it should sound something like this. When learning a new chord or trying to gain proficiency switching between chords, I like to employ a strategy of slow, smooth movement and very light touch, which is the opposite of what we tend to do when we're learning a chord, which is try to move really quick and really buckle down on the neck. No, we're trying to do the opposite here. So let's take A7 for an example, and let's try doing it that way. So we'll take our finger, right, and place it where we know it's supposed to go, and then go to the next one. I'm not really pushing down on the fingerboard. I'm just lightly touching the strings where they're supposed to go. And then, again, I'll move my fingers off, try to imagine where that fingering was, and then reattempt playing. Going back and forth in really slow movements without really stressing out your hand. To visualize and remember where to go before we get there. Now, at times, I know you'll be using one finger at a time, and that's good. But we eventually want to get to where it's a smooth movement. So it's okay if you're, remembering this finger and then remembering where this finger goes and doing that. That's okay. Now let's try D. Let's do it the same way. So pick a finger and then just go in order or however you feel most comfortable. And then draw your hand away from the neck, pull it back in, and do that just a few times just to learn the chord. G, like that. D7, G, A. And eventually, you can start doing that between chords too. D, A7 is a really common switch in this piece, so practice that one a lot. You notice you have a kind of a common spacing between A7 and D. A7 is here. D is a string over, and then pinky and thumb. A7 to D, pinky, thumb. So whenever you don't really need to move a finger or your hand position don't, try to keep common fingerings. For instance, from D to D7, it's just, again, the switch between these two. And that's why we use this type of fingering for these chords, because it'll take a lot of effort if we're playing D with another fingering, then having to switch our whole hand and move that over to a D7. In this case, we avoid ourselves that trouble by just using a free finger here, which is our pinky for D. And then G. Practice those smooth changes between chords, forwards and backwards, without really pressing down on the fingerboard. Again, we're going very light, very soft touch, very smooth movements. Then once we get comfortable and our fingers remember and know where to go, then we can start squeezing the neck gently. Another thing I like to do is when I'm learning a new chord is I'd like to say the chord out loud or say it in my head as I'm trying to form the chord shape with my fingers. So I'll think A7, I think about what it looks like on the fingerboard, and then my fingers will move there. And then once I'm settled, I'll say in my mind, I'll tell myself, A7, la séptima. Great. And then I'll move off, come back. D major, re mayor. D7, re séptima. G major, sol mayor. If you really look at me, Ranchito, we're just looking at 4 different chord changes. And so we can practice those one right next to each other. And if we could do that, playing the actual music and reading through it will be a lot easier for our left hand. So if we have our metronome here at 110, let's just try that exercise. It's going to consist of A7, then we'll switch to D, D7, G. Then from G we'll go back to A7 and just start it over and over. Let's practice that together a few times. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, ready, set, play. 1, D, D7, G, A, D, D7, G, A, D, D7, G, A, D, D7, Now that we kind of guided the left hand and it's on a good path, now we're going to guide our right hand, and that's the active strumming part of playing this arrangement for guitar. For that, we'll be using a pick, usually an equilateral triangle, or this really even triangle shape is really good. And in your right hand, you'll grasp the pick between your index finger and your thumb. And so these fingers should be free. You shouldn't really be using 2 fingers or another finger to hold it. It should be between the index finger and the thumb. Right? And a little bit of it should be sticking out. You don't want to be holding it too far out or too far in. Just somewhere comfortable in between. And the next thing that we're going to do is talk about our strum pattern. So the strum pattern, again, for the ranchera valseada is 2 down strums on beats 2 and 3 of 3/4 time. 1, 2, 3, 1, da, da, 1, da, da. The guitarrón will be playing on the first beat and we'll respond with 2 beats right after. So and to play that, we'll do 2 down strums in very quick and light manners. We won't really be digging in. So let's practice that. Let's go ahead and take our left hand, place it gently over the strings so that they're muted, sound like that. And then that way we can really hear the strike. We can really hear the percussive aspect of what we're doing. So if we try that, let's see. Let's go down to about 120 beats per minute. Let's do that in 3. Let's hear this. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Good. Now you might notice that I'm not trying to drag the strings across. So it's not 1, 2, 3, 1. I'm not dragging the pick across the strings like that. Actually going really, really comfortably and precisely through all of the strings. Every single strum is every single string. Da, da. Let's do it a little bit slower with the metronome. Let's go down to 100 beats per minute. Let's try that. Bum, bum. 1, 2, 3, rest, strum, strum, rest, play, play. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 2, 3, rest, play, 1. Let's all go to rehearsal A on our music. That's measure 11. You'll see a very interesting set of bar lines and brackets with 2 dots. That's an open repeat symbol. So what that means is that when you play through that, at some point you're going to come back and repeat most of the measures that are sandwiched in there. So we'll play through, and if you follow down to measure 30, you'll see the same symbol inverted. So they'll be facing each other with 2 dots on the inside. That means that you jump back to A and you repeat that section. The last 4 measures before the repeat, you'll see a bracket with a little number 1 inside. That's known as a first ending. You play through it the first time, and then when we repeat, we actually don't play that. We jump to the second ending, where you have a bracket with the number 2. At measure 100, you'll find a DSL coda, which means del segno al coda. So it's a set of 2 instructions. The first thing it says is for us to find the segno, which is rehearsal B or measure 35. It's that S-looking shape. That means that when we get to measure 100, we go to rehearsal B and we play through normally until we get to the second part of instructions, al coda. And that's at the end of measure 75. It's an oval-looking symbol with crosshairs going through it. Now at that point, when you reach that coda, you jump to the other coda on the music, which is the very last system. At the second coda, our last system of our music, we have 3 new symbols. The first is a retardando, which means that when we get to that measure, we slow down the music. The second symbol is a fermata. It looks like a dot with an arch over it. You'll also hear people refer to it as a bird's eye, and that just means to pause or hold for an unspecified amount of time. Followed by another measure that has a fermata. And then the third symbol is a tempo, which means that even though we've slowed down and paused, in this case for the singer, to finish out the phrase, we're able to come back in at the original tempo that we started off. Let's practice that last system together slowly. So we're at the coda, bottom of page 2, measure 101. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Singer. Here we go, and 1, 1, 1. Great, now that we've guided the left hand and the right hand, we've identified the roadmap to this piece, let's start putting it together. So the rest of the video will be just a performance as written on the music, and you can follow along. Remember, if it's too fast, go ahead and change the playback speed to something slower. Mi ranchito de capo, from the top. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, rest, rest. Tempo 1. Well, I hope this gets us off to a good start, and I hope you reach your goal of performing Mi Ranchito soon. It's been an honor and a pleasure serving as your virtual instructor on behalf of the Tucson International Mariachi Conference.